Hi, I'm Charles Neal. You know, I've been finishing for a long time. I'm 59. I started when I was 13. And I actually started in the automotive world doing painting cars and doing all that. And then I got into the trick painting and all the customized and stuff like that. And then as it all evolved into the wood finishes, there's a lot of little tricks that came along with me. But this is one pretty much specific to the wood. Now, like I said, I learned how to spray early on. So my choice of finishing has always been spraying it. Not to say we haven't done a lot of nice oil finishes and whatever. But that said, getting that perfect, pristine finish has always been an issue for most people. We teach finishing classes and predominantly spraying. And no matter what, until you become proficient at it, spraying doesn't always come out exactly as you want it. You know, you can get a little bit of debris in something, a little dust, whatever. And until you get used to that gun, spraying something like this post or a chair where you've got rungs and all of these different angles and places you have to access, it gets very difficult to get that off the gun, slick glass finish. Now, before I show you this, I'm going to caution you. First of all, I have no affiliation with any of the products that we use. They just work. The second thing is that what I'm going to be showing you is a spray can of lacquer. Now, the lacquer is not something you want to be spraying in your house. You want to wear proper protection. You want to exercise caution. It's flammable. Read the directions. Take the necessary precautions. Now, the one I'm going to be using here is Def Lacquer. And, you can find it at most of your woodworking stores. A lot of the box stores have it. And a lot of people have used it. But we're going to use it in a little different capacity today. Now, this happens to be satin. And satin's kind of our go-to sheen. It's the one that most people like. But they also make it in a semi-gloss and they also make it in a gloss. But here's what I'm going to show you. Particularly, let's assume for a moment you've brushed a finish or you've sprayed that chair and you're feeling around and it's just not dead smooth. There's little issues or you got a little run in the last coat. One of the things, there's two things I particularly like about the Def. Number one, now I don't have a respirator on, but you should. I can't wear one and talk to you. Is that when you spray it, I don't know how, I think you can see me. It's a fan. The second thing is it's a very fine mist, meaning the atomization of the product is very, very good. That's important. Now, what I do, very simply, this is a piece of 600 scuff pad, and I got some 1200 here. But what I'll often do, and let's just assume for a moment we're doing a touch-up. We got a little spot, a little run, we sanded out. So let's just sand a little corner here. Now we all know we can sand something, and you always wish that it felt like it did when you got through sanding it. Now for those that don't know, the first thing you notice when you sand any finish, for the most part, it's going to come up with a white dust on it. That's just the dried finish. Now this is perfectly slick, perfectly smooth. Our issue now is simply the sheen. We don't have the shine. We see the scratches. Now when I put it on, I want you to notice what I'm doing. I'm going to turn it sideways here and get another spot. I want you to see. I want to get it where you can see it. I'm going to make a pass, half lap back, half lap back, half lap. Half lap means I'm overlapping the first one. I want one thin coat of the deft on the surface. Then leave it dry. Now, one of the things, number one, with the spray can, there's not a lot of solids. Simply put, means there's not a whole lot of finish in there. But the other thing that I like with the deft, and I've been told by guys they've tried some of the Watcos and different ones, and it worked for them. So this is not just about deft. It's about finishing the finish. Now, I've got videos out here about rubbing them out and all of this. But this works. It's slick, quick, and fast. If, just like this step stool right here. If I wanted to, if it's not just right, I could give it a light scuff, clean it off, dust a coat of deft on it. Or, as you can see right here, it's drying. There we go. You can see the two chutes, two places where I shot it. And what you're seeing is the reflection of where it's still just a little bit wet, but it's drying quickly. That's another key. It dries very fast. Okay? When it's done, when it dries, because it's got a lot of solvent in it, basically lacquer thinner, it's a high grade. Now, what it will do, you can see this little overspray ring right there. You can see it a little bit. What it's going to do, it's going to do what's called burn in, meaning it's basically going to melt back into the finish. Now, once it's dry, I can also come back and simply take a little bit of brown paper bag, or in this case, a piece of craft paper, buff it a little bit, it'll be gone. It'll just disappear. Okay, I'm a little green, meaning my finish is still a little bit not cured, but I'm blended in, burnt right in. Now let me explain what happened. We've got a lot of, like I said, we've got a lot of solvent in here, and it's a good quality solvent. Now the chemicals, and I'm not a chemist, but the chemicals in the solvent, they melt the resins that are in the finish. And so what happens is that it's kind of a combination thing. What it's actually doing is kind of gently remelting the finishes that's on there, the surface, and then it's laying down a very thin coat of finish on its own. So it's kind of a reflow the surface, add a little finish type thing. Doesn't take a lot, and it leaves a nice, clean, smooth look. Now here's a set of steps we built, and you can see the top, and all I've done is scuffed it a little bit. Let's assume for a minute it had some debris or whatever in it again. Now I'm just going to set it up here so I can do it. And all I'm going to do one thin wet coat. Now I gave that a light scuff just with some 600. Now when that dries, I'm going to have a nice satin finish. It's going to dry fast. And because the finish is thin, any little debris or whatever that might try to get in it, the minute I hit it with a piece of craft paper, it's going to be gone. Now let's talk about compatibility. Lacquer is not compatible with everything. Particularly enamels and things like this, it can do what's called lift it. And that's because the lacquer is trying to dissolve the finish. And the finish isn't going to allow that. If you're using an oil, things like Danish oil, boiled linseed oil, some of these are not really hard finishes. And there's a point that as they're drying, they're kind of, they're kind of gooey, kind of soft, you know. That said, you know, you start hitting them with some lacquer, you could also lift them. Now, the oils I use, here's a Watco, here's an Armor Seal. if you take the oil that you're using and you just put a thin coat of it on a piece of glass or something, or a piece of metal, anything hard that's non-absorbent, and just let it dry. If you see the oil's kind of wrinkly, wrinkled up a little bit, or you can take your finger and it's really soft, you might want to, think about it a little bit. And that's probably not a good choice for using the lacquer on. Like I said, I've used the Watco and I've used the Armor Seal. Again, just let them cure. In reality, the panel we just used here and the step stools as well are finished in a water-based finish. If you're painting something with a latex paint, give it a light scuff, put a little depth on it after it's dried. You might be surprised. But again, big key. Always test before you do it. Okay, make sure you're compatible. Now, before I go, I'm going to show you one last little finishing trick, very quickly. And all I'm doing here is just kind of trying to help you out a little bit on some common issues that I get a lot of questions on. If you've done much finishing, you've probably at some point had what we'll call a sand through. What is that? Well, very simply, it's where you're doing a mid-coat sanding, or you're trying to sand, you're finishing, particularly if you get a run or something, the next thing you know, you've done sanded to your color. And particularly if you're using an oil finish or an oil-based stain, it's not going to take that color. You can wipe it and wipe it and wipe it, and it just doesn't do anything much. And the reason for that is because it's already sealed the wood off. Now, again, let's go back to the old auto body days and that trick painting. I have forever had an airbrush. Man, they cure a lot of ills. Let me show you. Now, can you do this with a spray gun or whatever? Sometimes, it depends upon the gun, if you can get that thing tuned down, very light fluid, and break it up really well. But you can take this airbrush, because you don't have a mechanical means application, meaning you're not wiping it, you're just laying it on. And you can dust it in. Now that would dry a little bit. I hit it again until I get my color right. And you take something like over here on an edge. Everybody sanded through an edge. I'm going to show you a quick trick. Back in the auto body days, most everything, one of the finishes that we used a lot of was the lacquers and stuff, especially for the custom painting and all. And you had to rub and buff all that out. Well, you could catch the edge of a fender or a little edge of a hood or something to burn the color off of it. Here was a trick I can do. This is just a piece of tape. You see the sand through here? It's kind of white on this top edge. Because we don't want overspray getting over here, darkening our panel, we do what's called a back tape. Put a little piece of tape on it, let it overhang, and roll it back. Then, when you dust that color in there, notice the term, dust it. I'm kind of in a bad position here, but I'm going to show you. Dust it, because you're spraying such a fine, can you see on the tape how fine a line I'm spraying? I can dust that right in there. And what it does is the tape, you don't get a defined line. What you get is it just kind of blends it back, because the overspray is just kind of going up under that tape a little bit, coloring your edge. Works quite well. Now you see my colors drying down here in the center a little bit. See how I can pinpoint where I want it? Get it where it's at. If you're doing little boxes, and you know, like when we're doing stuff, and we've got little pigeonholes and secretaries for all that stuff, and you're trying to get that color up in there around the edge, the interior edge of a raised panel or something, an airbrush can just, you would be amazed. And the other thing with them is that, again, could you take and buy the depth or a lacquer in a can and thin it very thin and use an airbrush? Probably so. I've not done that. I've sprayed a lot of lacquer with an airbrush, but I just pick up the cans. It's just convenient and easy, but very probable. And again, you wood turners and whatever, take an airbrush and use it to put your color on something that as you're turning it to color it and see what you've got, it works quite well. So, you know, it might be something you're going to look at. Now, one of the things people always asking when I do a video like this, where did I get what? Again, I got the Deft, I don't know if it's Woodcraft or Lowe's or one of them. I mean, you see it all around. The airbrush right here, this is a little Badger that I got from Woodcraft. So, you know, it just works. These sanding sponges that we use for mid-coat sanding, they're just great. They're just great. I think Woodcraft and a couple others have them. There's also industrial abrasives, is where we get a lot of them from. So, you know, look at this as it's drying down. It's dull. It's very dull because all it is a dye on there. But once it's down and it gets a finish on it, again, you should have a respirator on. My color's restored. Okay. Hope this helps you out a little bit. Be safe. Make sure you take your safety precautions. And hope this helps you get out of trouble. I'm Charles Neal. Catch you later.